A person's a person, no matter how small. That's one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Seuss. Hello everyone, my name is Erica. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Seuss. A bit about the video before we get started. We are going to talk about his biography and talk about some major points in his life that happened to get him to be such a successful author. Another point is we're going to talk about an interview from the Dartmouth College, some random facts for you, a book list along with some reviews, and some quotes. I hope you enjoy. So, let's get this started. When I hear of the words Dr. Seuss, I immediately think of my childhood. It brings back so many great memories that I had with my teachers and my friends. I loved reading his books. It sparked our imaginations, we giggled because of all the tongue twisters and we couldn't even say words, the weird words that weren't even words. Dr. Seuss loved it. He loved entertaining people. He didn't just write for children, he wrote for adults too. And as an adult, I can honestly say that I love reading his books. I work with students and children of all ages, and that is one of my go-to books to grab and read. It's always a good time reading one of Dr. Seuss's books. It may come to a shock to some people, but his real name is not Dr. Seuss. That's not even his last name, actually. His real name is Theodore Seuss Geisel, and he was born to Henrietta Seuss Geisel and Theodore Robert Geisel. He was named after his father, but his middle name was his mother's maiden name. He was born on March 2nd, 1904 in Springfield, Massachusetts. During high school, he did write for his school newspaper, and when he went off to college, he chose to go to Dartmouth College, and he pursued an undergraduate degree in English literature. While he was at school, he wrote for the school humor magazine, which was called the Jack-O-Lantern. While he worked for the school's magazine, he became the editor-in-chief. This was a huge accomplishment for him. He thoroughly enjoyed working for the magazine. Not only did he become the editor-in-chief, but he also wrote many articles and drew pictures that had people roaring with laughter. He was great at his job. Unfortunately, being editor-in-chief was cut short due to him and a few of his friends hosting a drinking party. Not only was this against school policy, but it was during the time of the Prohibition, so they all had to be reprimanded. He did find a way to get around the punishment, so he still wrote for the magazine, but instead of signing his name as Theodore Geisel, he signed it with Seuss, and this was the first time he had used that pseudonym. After graduating from Dartmouth College, Seuss decided to pursue his doctorate degree in English literature at Oxford University. There he had met his future wife, Helen Palmer. Unfortunately, Seuss was not too keen on going to class and paying attention. He was catching himself doodling all the time and writing rhymes on his notebook paper rather than professor notes. Helen noticed this and told him, "You were born to write and to draw, and that is what you should pursue." So, instead of fulfilling his father's wishes of earning a doctorate degree, Seuss thought it would be a better idea to tour Europe rather than going to class. Him and Helen ended up getting married in 1927, and that was the same year that he dropped out of school to pursue writing. Seuss and Helen returned back to the United States, where Seuss pursued a full-time career as a cartoonist. He landed a job at Standard Oil in the advertising department, and his most famous piece of work there was for the Flit advertisement. This was so known that it opened up doors for him in children's literature. World War II was quickly approaching, and Dr. Seuss wanted to do anything that could help. He was too old for the draft, so instead he decided he would write cartoonists, and he helped make animated videos. Some of Seuss's books were actually written off of social and political reasonings. The Lorax was an environmental conservationism and activism. Yertle the Turtle was in reaction to Hitler's rise to power. The Sneetches was about racism and discrimination. The Butter Battle book is for the arms race, and Horton Hears a Who is about anti-isolationists. Dr. Seuss had very strong feelings about all of these topics, and these were ways for him to express. Dr. Seuss loved helping anybody that needed it, and by writing political and social writings during World War II was his way of helping. He did have a calling for children's books, so he went back to writing those. Unfortunately, his first one was rejected almost 30 times before it was actually published. This book was And to Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street. It was finally published, and it was a huge hit, and this was a ginormous send-off for Dr. Seuss in his writings. Is it possible to write a book with only 236 words? Yep, and Dr. Seuss did it. He wrote The Cat in the Hat, which was the biggest book of his career, that some say. It's famous. The hat that he's wearing is actually a hat that Dr. Seuss owns, but we'll get to that part later. Unfortunately, in the year of 1967, Dr. Seuss's life had changed drastically. Helen, his wife, had committed suicide. She was not only dealing with physical pain of going through cancer, but also the emotional trial of her husband having an affair with one of their lives. 1 year after Helen had passed, Dr. Seuss and Audrey had gotten married. Audrey was a huge influence on Dr. Seuss's life. She encouraged him to write, and she also influenced some of his writings. She loved being silly, and she brought the silliness out in him even more than what was there. Audrey became the president of Dr. Seuss Enterprises when Ted had died. Dr. Seuss had continued to write throughout his life, and unfortunately, on September 24th, 1991, he passed away at the age of 87 years old. He had written and illustrated 44 children's books, and he had won 3 Emmy Awards, 3 Grammy Awards, 3 Caldecott Honors, a Pulitzer Prize, an Academy Award. And among all of his honors, the greatest one was entertaining people and children for generations and generations to come. And now I'm going to read parts of an interview with Dr. Seuss provided by the Dartmouth College. He says, "This was the year I discovered the excitement of marrying words to pictures. I began to get it through my skull that words and pictures were yin and yang. I began thinking that words and pictures married might possibly produce the progeny more interesting than either parent. It took me almost a quarter of a century to find the proper way to get my words and pictures married. At Dartmouth, I couldn't even get them engaged." I love how he expresses words and pictures as a pair. They go together like yin and yang. It didn't take him a week or two while he was writing magazines in college. It took him 25 years. So much practice went into this, and he realized it himself. And it wasn't going to just come to him quickly. It was going to take practice and practice and practice. And here are some of his books. One is Green Eggs and Ham, which is about Sam I Am, who is very persistent in trying to get his friend to eat some green eggs and ham, no matter where they are, whether that is with a mouse in a house, with a goat in a boat, on a train, over here or over there. Another book is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is a classic. It is about the Who's down in Whoville, who like Christmas a lot, but the Grinch hates it. and he's planning on stealing it. It's up to Cindy Lou Who and Max and the Grinch to all come together to save Christmas. Another one is One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. This is a great book for counting and for color recognition with kids of younger ages. The Cat in the Hat, like we had said earlier, it is about a crazy cat coming into a house with two other kids while their parents are gone and they get into some mischief. Yertle the Turtle, that is a good one. It has so many stories in it. It's wonderful to read. It's more of a chapter book because you can read it over many nights. Another great book is The Lorax, which is about a young boy who is trying to find a seed, and the Lorax comes out and explains the story of how all the trees were torn down and how that ruins the earth. It's a great book for environmentalism and getting kids to be encouraged to plant. Here are just a few of my favorite Dr. Seuss quotes. Today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Another one is, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And one of my all-time favorite is, you're never too old, too wacky, too wild to pick up a book and read to a child. That is so true, and kids love reading. And now it's time for some random facts. Dr. Seuss never had any biological children. He did have 2 children from Audrey, 2 daughters. He used the name Dr. Seuss, even though he wasn't a doctor, 1, to add credibility to his stories, and 2, to fulfill his father's wishes for him having a doctorate degree. He had joined the war effort by writing those articles. He also sold his best-selling book on a bet, and he wrote a book only using 50 words. This is the end of our video. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. I will be adding the links to the Dartmouth interview along with the other sources that I used, and I hope you get out there and go read some Dr. Seuss books. Enjoy!